Game loaded.
There we are. Delay and all. So finally, yes. And if you can hear me, that means that we have audio from the very beginning. So we start at the Lessons Learned podcast. Welcome, Chapelmon, my co-host. We changed the time because things change. And hopefully, if you saw a little bit of things going in and out of the stream, was I'm playing with the features, trying to add more text, music, and all that to make the pre-show a little more lively. Today we're gonna be talking about, or tonight I say, well, depending where you are, it could be day, night, morning, evening, about the big news still, which is EA, Star Wars, EA, and lest I forget, EA, because that's what's going on. So I'm going to hopefully I can cue in a couple of things here, starting with 17. Yeah, I mean, it's been a thing, and
It's
a bit of a mess.
Yeah, it's hitting the mainstream.
And we're going to be talking about that a lot. And the reason for it, of course, is because of the hullabaloo of microtransactions and loot crates and people just being upset about Battlefront and the possibilities of that, impacting the market. I mean, we have, for example, the possibility of, and I'm supposed to be, I'm trying to share some video. Apparently, it won't let me.
I see it on my end, but I'm not sure if it's on the stream.
No, it's not on the stream. So we're gonna have to stop that. That was an attempt at zooming in some video from from EA's play of 2017, which was, of course, was their big production of during E3. So I was gonna cue that again. We're trying different things in the program, so this is a work in progress. One reason why I had that queued up was that I was recording it for a video that I'm working on, which is, and we talked about this in the past in the podcast, about it isn't simply the microtransactions. We have to live and we have to look at the whole business model, but trying to compress the current business model in about 15 minutes or so. It's been a work. It's been ongoing work. But hopefully that will be something that I can get to. But before we get to that, of course, we can discuss the different aspects of that during the show. And we have to discuss not only microtransactions and loot crates, which we talked before, and EA and Disney and possible legal action and some other stuff. So this is becoming very complicated very fast. Could you say that this is sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, or are we just looking at something that is one of those things that just explodes and then, goes away?
It's going to be tough to tell because these practices have been going on for a while now. So I think what's drawn this into the light is the fact that it's a major franchise that's not just popular among gamers, but it's in society as a whole. Star Wars is a pop culture phenomenon that's been, since the 70s?
Yeah, 1977 was the first movie, yeah.
So that's something that's been in the public consciousness for over 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
You get something that's also not just for gamers, but potentially for children.
Mm-hmm.
Now that this property is owned by Disney, as you mentioned, and Disney's being the harbinger of all kid-friendly, family-friendly entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of implications that goes to that. And I'm thinking of something like the entire backlash with, say, something like Shadow of Mordor or Shadow War
Mm-hmm.
and Destiny. Those two other ones that the the two microtransaction events that happened right before Battlefront didn't draw this much attention. Not in terms of the average Joe
Mm-hmm.
and any regular media.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it really has to do a lot with the property for now, because no one outside of gaming really probably knows much about Destiny or Shadow of War, even though they probably have heard of Lord of the Rings. And on top of that, I think the rating also has to do a lot with that. Those games are rated M, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas I'm not entirely sure what Battlefront is, but I'm going to assume it's probably at least a T for teen.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's more of an entertainment franchise that isn't just strictly gaming, but has a bunch of movies attached to it that are also aimed towards family, not just adult audiences.
Yeah, we're talking about movies. We're talking about television shows. We're talking about music. We're talking about one of the largest franchises in current business. I mean, before George Lucas sold it to Disney for, I think it was something like $13 billion or wherein he was making just by sitting on the franchise, right? Just by the franchise existing, no movies, no, maybe just books and T-shirts, that sort of thing. Tie-in material, spin-off material, $1 billion a year. I mean, those are ridiculous amounts of money. I mean, it probably just grossing that he probably earned a little less than that, but still, to be able to sit in your home and just reliably know that you're going to get approximately $1 billion, basically a check of $1 billion every year. I mean, that tells you the impact and the import of it. And of course, now we have the latest movie, The Last Jedi, is going to come out in December, around the corner, because we're November 29th. You don't want bad publicity attached to your franchise when they're going to launch a movie. And I was reviewing the video from E3, and they launched the presentation for Battlefront 2 with a tweet from John Boyega saying, will Battlefront have a full story mode this time around, right? And then a lot of tweets and stuff like that, simply saying, oh, we listened to, the critics, i.e. the players, and we're going to give you what you want. Clearly, people didn't want a game not merely riddled with microtransactions, but literally built around microtransactions, and particularly loot crates and loot boxes, right? The idea that, oh yeah, you want Darth Vader, which the entire original trilogy was around the story of Darth Vader and the Skywalker family. Yeah, I gotta pay extra, right? You want R2D2, whatever. Yeah, you gotta pay extra. It's like people are like, yeah, how about no? And I think with Battlefront, from the gaming side, there was already resentment. I mean, this is one of the situations where, again, we talked about before, you have a follow-up product that suffered not only with its own mistakes, but the failures of previous products. Because I played both Battlefronts, original Battlefronts, right? To be honest, the original Battlefront was fun. It was okay. But it has some problems. Like the ship combat, because everything was getting to the ground, you couldn't really get too high. You couldn't control fighters in a very effective way, most maps. So you ended up crashing all the time. So, getting on a TIE fighter or an X-Wing or whatever. Oh, I got in an X-Wing. Okay. You just fly around for 5 seconds and boom, you're dead, right? You crashed. In some other maps, it could be fun, but it's still, you didn't last very long. But it was there, right? It was there. And people remember fondly, right? At a time where the Clone Wars were coming around, and people were like, "Yeah, well, these movies now might be great." But one of the things you saw was that it was a good, entertaining, simple you know, FPS. Basically, that's what it. Well, FPS. You could always play third person as well. Often it was played third person, and it was just there, to enjoying the Star Wars universe. It was fun, and then Battlefront 2 came along, and they did add some significant modes. Like you had, space battles, and you can go from one ship to the other. Right? People were expecting an improvement, a significant improvement, and what they got with the original Battlefront was more of the same, better graphics, better sound, and that was it. Like in many ways, considering the many years between the two Battlefronts that came out, and the fact that Battlefront 3 got canceled, so they could then relaunch the series, we were saying, okay, it's prettier, but what about these things, right? And that was a lot of expectations that Battlefront 2 would be again an improvement. And instead, it was more of the same with loot crates and cards and all of these, these ridiculous things we have, and the grinding and all that. And I think it's also happens that because you have Shadow of War, you have those things, people, what's really happening, I think, is that people are getting grounded down, right? They're willing to accept certain things until they're not, right? They reach a breaking point, and such a beloved franchise, it happens like people will defend this stuff until they can't defend it anymore, and then they turn like that. They break, and I think this is what happened. Where they will have lasting legs, it seems that the industry believes that it will have lasting legs because they're panicking. There was supposed to be an article that may or may not be some kind of internet troll organizing a group to defend players. Jim Sterling talked about it from the Inquisition. Eric Kane from Forbes, he's done a wonderful job covering a lot of video game news. Try to reach out to the person who really founded this group, and he's someone who literally has said in the past that he's a troll, like he's a professional troll, right? And it's like, okay, so we don't know that, but it shows the kind of environment, right, that it can invite something like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if you would have, the language, the presentation kind of sounded like something that the industry would in fact put together, right? The kind of thing that they actually would do.
Essentially form another SRB or another ratings board, except that maybe regulate the microtransactions or something, which I'd be dubious about.
Well, that's another thing. It's like we talked about this before, and I'm going to say it again. And the title of the video is going to be the tip of the iceberg. Is that while loot crates and loot boxes are particularly insidious in that they use them, they sort of refine the mechanics of the gambling aspect of microtransactions, but it's always been, the language, the stuff has always been about gambling, like calling people minnows and dolphins and whales. That's a big clue. Like, it's all about getting people to buy, not to buy a game anymore, because it's tied to this is, games as service. Like EA announced that they want to do games as service. Well, if you're going to charge like a very small amount a month, and I think like Origins charges like $9 a month, something like that, then the real money is going to come from riddling every single game they have with microtransactions, right?
Yep.
Keeping a game like, I don't know, the FIFA alive forever, instead of trying to churn out a game after them, it's like, oh, we're just trotting out constant updates. And if you want this new player, give us $1.50. If you want this and that, then and other things as well, right? Nickel and diming everything. And it also comes again, this Destiny 2 also had an impact. So I think it's from the gamer side, it's picking up, and like you said, in the sort of wider culture, it's because of Star Wars, right? The name is there, and the name recognition. Also, it's November. We're out around Christmas. This would be the kind of game that I think a lot of parents, kids are like, I want to play Star Wars, and all my friends are playing Battlefront. And oh, by the way, the Xbox One X is coming around the corner, and maybe it's going to be on Switch as well. And now I saw today on Twitter a bundle for PlayStation 4 Plus with Battlefront, right? It's like well, if Battlefront doesn't do very well, if it does well, it's supposed to sell Sony PlayStations. If it doesn't, it feels like you
Yeah.
just bet on the wrong horse. So it this could have bigger repercussions, but I don't think so. Not at the moment. I think it's something that when the bubble burst, and yes, I think there is a bubble and it will burst. People will look back to this as like, oh, by the way, remember, fall winter 2017 where EA had these problems, and it's gonna be a long list of stuff that people will say like, oh, we told you this was gonna happen, and this is what happened, and blah, blah. It'll be I don't think it will be the ET to Atari, but it'll be more like the Pac-Man, right? Or the another game that came out around that time. It was Custer's Revenge, stuff like that, right? It'll be that kind of game. Like it was like, yeah, when you dig deeper, this is one of the things that were in the chopping block, so to speak, right? Gesundheit to the dog.
Yeah, that was my dog.
Yeah, and I think that's going to happen. And then of course we have the specter of regulation.
Yeah. So we got Hawaii, the state of Hawaii, looking into whether these should be considered gambling. Was it Belgium, Australia? I'm probably missing some other countries there.
The British Gambling Commission came out and said that it wasn't gambling because you cannot, as of yet, exchange virtual goods for real money and or real products.
Which I would argue, I don't know. You got Steam trading cards. Somehow people make money off of those.
Oh yeah, I mean it's sort of the pachinko type of thing. But in the case of like a Battlefront, or you can't do that yet. And in fact, I think that's one. It's legally speaking, it's the saving grace of this. But also, I don't think any company wants that because it's going back to the gold sellers of MMO, so like World of Warcraft. And we people traded characters in eBay and stuff like that, and Ultima, online. It happened all the way back to that. But also, in many ways, the thing about microtransactions is that you're buying virtual goods, which are directly tied to the virtual space.
Yeah.
So if you buy spray in Overwatch, you can't use that spray anywhere else. I suppose if you buy a 3D printer and print, Tracer with the spray, then you can get it real good, but that's all on you, right? That's not on them, and they're not providing that service. I do think this is going to have legs, but it's more like like I said, like a centipede, right? It's going to be adding more to it, because even Blizzard was like, oh no, we're not as bad as our microtransactions are not, Overwatch. Oh no. No.
Who there's two major companies that are coming to mind right now that have been kind of left out of this discussion, and I think it's important to actually bring them up, and that would be Google and Apple. Because think about it, they have their Play Store and their whatever the equivalent for their Apple products is for their App Store. If regulation comes into play, that would also affect all those mobile games, which microtransaction is their bread and butter. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much what the bulk of that entire industry is microtransactions. And we haven't heard a peep from them, which is kind of interesting, because if there are talks about regulations, you would think that those two high rollers would step in.
I think both Apple and Google they don't want to attract attention to themselves, right? The thing about mobile market is that while you have millions of people playing mobile games, certainly, in many ways, it's sort of it's still obscure because it's on their apps. Like, oh, you have apps for your game, right? But can most people mention more than one or two games that they play that online? I'm playing a game, right? Casually, yeah. Oh, I'm playing this game, has cute, horses or something, or a bouncing ball or a bird or whatever. Very few of these games say, what was the game? Angry Birds is one of the very few examples of a game that really, became its own thing, right? And
Yeah.
still is. But
Maybe like
most of these games don't have the reach, even within the gaming community. Saying Clash of Clans, but again,
Candy
that's
Crush.
Candy
that
Crush.
that
But
was a browser.
that's within the gaming community. There've been some examples of companies being sorry, a little bit of a gas here. Um, that have been looked at because say a kid spent I don't know $10,000 on their parents' credit card,
Yeah.
on a game, right? But often those skate by saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, that's just one kid, one set of parents who were not careful," and we clearly, we wave the money back. And if you look at the mobile industry, many of the companies, the big companies, have sort of taken a sort of a casino approach to how they deal with their clients.
Hmm.
Like sometimes they will send alerts to people like, oh,
Oh
you're
yeah.
playing this game too much, right? Or remember to take, a breath or relax, and they actually send messages to people, like they're actually because they know they're doing. There's again, it's the possibility of winning, right? It's a big win.
Yeah.
It's like leveling up in World of Warcraft, like that sort of random award that seems to come out of nowhere but doesn't.
Like
That's
sometimes sometimes they'll give you, hey, here's a little bit of premium currency, here have 5, gold coins that you can buy premium things with.
yeah,
Have a taste for it.
and that's what really makes gambling addictive. It isn't the act of gambling per se. I mean, the putting down the chips or buying the stuff. It's sort of the expectation of sort of beating the house, right? That you're always going to get more than you're going to put in, right?
Yep.
Oh, I spent $5 on microtransactions, but I got hundreds of sprays and voice lines and character models and I got this gun and stuff like that. In many ways, that's the line that many mobile games try not to cross. But EA and others in Triple N was like, oh, we don't give a fuck. We're just gonna go. But yeah, we're in it to win it. We're gonna make entire. Well, they will make games entirely around microtransactions, certainly. But I think that another thing is that they're doing it around the grind, and
Yep.
that's bringing back very bad memories from again the MMO days, right? Because what
Oof.
happened was that people got tired. They played World of Warcraft for years, and then it's like, I'm doing raids over and over again. I am doing this stuff, and I just got an alert from the Know, and it says news from the Know: EA loses $3 billion over Star Wars Battlefront 2. The Know game news. Thank you, the Know, for that wonderful news. Yes, it was $3 billion in stock.
Yeah.
That is literally Electronic Arts as a company is valued $3 billion less. That tells you the kind of numbers that we're really dealing with. I mean, the fact that EA had in its core value of its stock at or more, it has to have more because otherwise the company would have dissolved by now. $3 billion was worth that much in stocks overall. That's the kind of money we're talking about, and it's just bewildering, and I think that's why they want to make more. I mean, when you're talking about these big numbers, they just want to make more. And you look at Candy Crush, and they're like, "Oh, we can, if Candy Crush can make billions, we want those billions, right?"
Yep.
And it's just, it's getting out of hand, right? I mean, these are symptoms. The microtransactions themselves are a problem, but loot crates and loot boxes are a symptom. It's also using cards for leveling. Like, it's not simply a matter of, oh, I get a level and I have these abilities. I have to get a card and I have to level that card. So it's using leveling systems that were this progression systems that were designed to sort of track the progression of the players and sort of reward them a little bit, and now they become sort of insane. They're like, again, we're using that World of Warcraft thing to, oh, you level up your card, so now you have a level 15 card, which makes it better than somebody who has a level 14 card on this character. But you have these other 7 characters which are different levels, and your actual character is at this other level, and you have this currency for this and this currency for that. It's breaking the games. That's the thing. You're breaking your own products just to shovel this stuff out.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest examples was Mankind Divided, that you had a literal break in the game when you pretty much sold the experience points, the Paraxis kits, to unlock your ability. So you could essentially just buy your way through the game and unlock everything and just beat the game really easily.
Mm-hmm.
Just because Eidos Montreal was forced to put in microtransactions.
Yeah, by Square Enix. And you go back to people saying, "Oh, well, it's just cosmetic," and you know, I made a video about this. It's a slippery slope, right? If they can get away with it, they will. I mean, and we've seen. I mean, this is a long time pattern, and it goes back to stuff like The Sims. Bethesda did it with Fallout 3, right? Selling the real, and Capcom did it with another game, selling the real ending to the game in a DLC, right? The fix for one game and the real ending in another. It's taking what within some parameters are good ideas, and welcome Gardog 10 12 very long number. Welcome to the podcast. And just messing with it. It's just a bit too much. I mean, I consider myself to be a sort of a totalitarian when it comes to this stuff. I mean, I do not like microtransactions. The only exception that I put in is when we're dealing with free-to-play games. And I would prefer in a free-to-play game to either have the option of buying the game or having adverts or something like that. Like people say, "Oh, you know, I was someone tried to bait me into a discussion." Really, because the whole set of assumptions this person was using in the post was just wrong. Like, "Oh, well, would you pay, you know, $25 for a $22 game if that meant not getting microtransactions?" It's like, how about just selling me the game at $25, right?
Yeah.
If you can make a profit at $25, and $25 is much less than $60, which is sort of the price range, then just sell the game at $25, right? Why are you sort of lowballing your product so that you can then, well, oh, by the way, you know, if you really don't want microtransactions, it's like, you know, subscribe so you don't get in advertising in websites. It's like,
yeah.
Okay, do I have to take all this advertising or I pay? But do I get anything really for paying? Is this a service that you're giving me that is really worth me paying for? It just, you know, I shouldn't have to pay not to be annoyed.
Actually, I kind of asked myself, what's the purpose of like the origins of subscriptions? Like, oh, I get access to early games and demos and whatnot. I'm like, that's it. Like, I remember when demos used to be free. I'm sure there might be more to it than that. I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, basically they have games on rotation, where you can play at any time when they have rotation. Very similar to what Sony does with PlayStation Network and Microsoft has with that. But the problem is they don't have enough games in their library. Unless you're basically a sports fan, because you know you want to play the football and the soccer and all that. I mean, I see it's like, okay, you have like 5, 10 games, 20 games. I mean, Steam did it, and they're not gonna do it because they prefer selling as many games, no matter how trashy they are, as much as possible. Get more money out of that. But if Steam would do it, it's like, oh yeah, we have 5 million games in our library. Pay us $10, $15 a month, and you can play, I don't know, 15 of them or 20, 30 for them at a time. It's like, sure. Sorry. I'll do that. That sounds like fun. It's a good value proposition. In fact, I think that's another thing about Origins. It's biting EA in the butt, because what happened is that many of these complaints were discovered by the early well, let's call it what it is, early access
Yeah.
players, right? They're like, yeah, we are playing the game and the game sucks. It has this, this, and this, and this. And it happened in that window where you're bracing for release. And people are like, oh, they're so excited and they have maximum engagement with the product. And all those people that pre-ordered were like, what? Excuse me? What do you mean? I paid $120 for the Golden Goose Edition, and it doesn't work. Oh no! Oh, come on! You can't do this. And in came in the canceling the. I don't want to call them pre-orders anymore. You know what? Even the idea of pre-order is silly. I mean, that's the whole the way things are manipulated. It's like, no, you're just
Yeah.
ordering a product.
Pre-selling, I guess.
It's just an order. You're ordering a product. It's like ordering. It's like going to Amazon and saying, if Amazon tells you this game will be available on the 22nd of December, right,
Yeah.
for Christmas, it won't be available before. It won't be available after. It will be only available at or after December 22nd. You say, okay, I'm going to order it so that when December 22nd comes along, it'll be already in the truck and it'll come to my home, so that 23rd or 24th will be in my house. That's it. It's an order. Because pre-order was, and you can say it in Spanish, I don't know, you can follow, it's like reservar, to reserve a copy. And you go into GameStop, or you did it when I was a kid, it was comic book shops, right? You still do it. Like, I don't know, a game costs $60, I gave you $5. Make sure the copy's there. Comic book costs, well, I don't know, $7, $8 right now, maybe more, depending on the issue. I'm gonna give you $2 or something like that. So when it comes around, you reserve a copy, and I don't miss out. I have to wait in line or something, right? That's the idea of a pre-order, because the order is going to come in, but now it's just an order. You're ordering games because you're paying full price or more. Like, even the language is kind of messed up, right? All these tricks and stuff, like, oh no, you're pre-ordering, you're getting that pre-order bonus, with someone else 6 months down the line going like, yeah, I got that with a DLC, and I pay $60 for everything and then some. Right? What's the benefit, right? I think that's what's happening. I think we talked about this before. Again, people waiting.
Yeah, you get the benefit of the patches, all the DLC at the cost of launch. Maybe a lot of times it's a lot lower.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to deal with any kind of game-breaking bugs. Sure, you don't get to play it ahead of time as everyone else does. It may not be in everyone's like current consciousness right now and or what they're talking about, but hey, you can at least enjoy it at your pace. If you're not buying it right away, you're not going to be a person that really cares on being current.
And I think that's also what all this talk about, especially from EA, when they essentially axed, what was it, the developer again? Visceral. Talk about the axing of Visceral. Oh, single player games are going to go away, right? I know, and again, James Sterling talked about this. This is something that's going on for a very long time, and the reason for it is, and also games as service as well, is if you have waiting, it's harder to wait if a game has a very strong social component, right? If it's like an MMO like Destiny or The Division or a fast-paced FPS, I'm gonna wait 6 months to play this game when it's a lower price, when there's nobody else playing it. No, I have to get it when all my friends are playing it, right? And I have to get the map. You know, it used to be the thing with Call of Duty with all the maps, right? The map packs. Oh, you got these maps. Oh, well, we got new maps. You got to pay more for them because all your friends are going to pay for it and they're going to play for the maps. And until they realized that they were dividing their, their consumer base, and that people were still playing older games that they couldn't simply cancel because you have millions of people playing those games. Because if you suddenly cancel them, then those millions of people were going to raise a stink and, well, affect the franchise. So this is a mess. This is what it is. It's a bloody, bloody mess.
Actually, that whole thing about visceral reminded me. I saw a story today about somebody who's working on the God of War, the new God of War game, pretty much responded on in a tweet to that comment about single player games not selling as much with the meme of Picard with his head over his head
Mhm.
and saying, "The hell are you guys talking about? It's God of War. We're working on that right now." What is it? Cody Barlog, which is he is. Uh, he is the director of the God of War game.
Mhm.
I'm not entirely sure if it has a subtitle. I just refer to God of War Logan Edition.
Yeah, I mean it's a thing, and I mean it's been building up for a while, and it will continue because that's another thing. When the industry gets into trouble, they never correct course. I mean, EA said we're gonna, even the way EA said it. Like I think last thing that EA said was, "Oh, the reason why we didn't put cosmetics the way we had in Battlefront, well, the relaunch Battlefront was because a pink Darth Vader would not fit into the universe."
Yeah, might break lore, even though we were doing it in our last
Time.
game.
Do you know how much, for example, like anime skins in like Starship and fighter planes sell? Right? It's just, I don't know. It's just like, even, I mean, they're scrambling to make it to, and that's another thing. It's like people are getting tired of the language again. Like, oh, we're doing this for you. It's all about options, really. You know, it's all about giving the player options and giving you flexibility and helping you out because we're your friends. And that has worked in the past, but this time around it doesn't work. It didn't work. I think it will continue to work. And when already I have people defending Overwatch. It's like, oh, Overwatch, no, Overwatch is no. Overwatch is great. It's not the same. It's not the
Yeah.
same. It's not the same. Loot crates, yeah, sure, but not the same. Listen, Overwatch was a genius move by Blizzard, Activision Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
Why? But if you think about it, what they're selling you is the microtransactions. Mind you, there is a game there. It's a fun game. It's, run around with more
Yeah.
people. That's fine. But the focus on the heroes, every time the hero comes in, it's like, oh, the hero has this. Look at this hero with a new skin. Look at the hero, the voice print. Look at the backstory. Oh, look at this. Look at that, right? The
Yeah.
very little of that story that the game has is almost always around the characters. And guess what the microtransactions are? New skins for characters, sprays for characters, showing images of characters, and voice lines. So you're buying stuff. It's like buying it's like buying a virtual T-shirt of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah. See, it's all right that as Overwatch looks. The reason why I've never picked it up is because I refuse to pay for something that's essentially League of Legends that I have to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, you don't have to pay for the characters to play them. I think you can play all of them outright, right?
True. And we used to be on sale on PC. The PC version and sort of the starter pack was lower than the console version. And then they just, I mean, it was so popular that they actually got a price hike. It was like, oh well, everybody's gonna pay $60 because everybody's already paying $60, so we don't care. And it's also, and you also see when, and I think it's like a lot of the stuff that comes out of the mouth of executives, it's less about the realities, or the apparent realities of the industry, and more about their fears. Like, I think they're actually afraid that they are in a bubble. And they're afraid that this is going to collapse. And so instead of finding like people in a sinking ship, or it's like, I don't know, it's like taking a time machine, getting on a ship in Britain, and then realizing, oh, this is the Titanic. And we're in day one of the Titanic. It's going to sink. Not right now, but in a couple of days, maybe it's going to sink, right? right? It's like, oh, and what do you do? Well, I don't know, write it out. And, well, we left the time machine back at home, so like, well, we're stuck here. Let's have a party. Let's party like this, like the end, literally end of the world, because it's gonna sink. We can't do anything about it. We're not gonna warn the captain to change course. We can't change history. We know we're not gonna do that. So okay, let's just party, and we'll probably hit this. The first person who goes to our lifeboat, we'll hit him over the head and just crawl into a lifeboat and survive, and that's it. And row back to shore. I mean,
and actually, while I was looking trying to pull up that other story, I just saw this new one right here about Bungie committed to doing a better job opening a dialogue with Destiny 2 players. So
yeah.
There we go again with people up high trying to be transparent, apparently, or at least telling players that they're going to be transparent when it comes to listening to feedback and what they're doing.
But even then, it's doublespeak, because out of 1984, it's like EA didn't say we're canceling microtransactions. Say we're suspending microtransactions, right? It's very legalistic, very lawyerly, very driven PR talk, right? It's like, okay, we screwed up. Let's we don't have any microtransactions anymore. Sure, okay. Well, mea culpa. No, it's like, well, we heard from Disney CEO that gave us a personal call and said, don't fuck with us. So, because you're big, we're bigger. We're Disney. It's like, the House of the Mouse doesn't fuck around. And like, oh, well, microtransactions, so we're going to just suspend them because of reasons. But you know what? It's all about choice. It's because we love you. It's all about you.
Yeah, but I think the important thing to remember is that Disney didn't step in because they thought that microtransactions were unethical in some way. No. They stepped in because they were more concerned about their image, not because they cared about the players. I think that's the important takeaway as well.
But you can see that at least I can see Disney being just sort of like, you know what? Let's be honest. I mean, I see Disney's move being far more honest than EA's.
True.
Right? Like EA, it's like, okay, this is the way. You can say if I'm an executive at Disney, right? I'm big in the castle in one of the towers, and they're like, EA pitches this game as microtransactions. I was like, okay, fine, that's how it's done. It's gonna make how much money? This is how you do it. There's no problem. It's not. Is it illegal? No. Okay, fine. Go ahead. I don't know about video games. You're the people who know about video games. Go ahead and do the thing, right? And then when people start saying, oh, by the way, we don't want kids around this, like, oh, they had to mention the kids. Okay, where's the phone? Give me the CEO of EA on the line. Get Seattle on the line. We need to talk. There is a danger about this as well, in that when you talk about gambling, well, I do believe it works that way. It also brings a specter of ye old moral panic, right? And this is, it not only panics the industry, it I think panics a lot of people who, like ourselves, who are older and experience these moral panics about video games before, right? GTA and stuff like that.
Night Trap.
In that often moral panic is just that. It's a panic with no, it's like War of Worlds, transmission in the US. Like, oh, the aliens are landing. It's like, this is BS, right? It's not happening. Dungeons and Dragons and heavy metal causing suicides and, all of that. But this one has legs, because if you start having people start doing studies, for example, and tying, rates of consumption, it's like, oh, let's talk to credit card companies. And if they give data about this, let's talk, put pressure on Steam to let us know, which games are doing this, on Apple, on Google. If that starts to happen, even though, how can I put this? The real problem is that they're messing how games are doing this, and it's a sort of house of cards that's going to topple over because, this is just a huge bubble, right? That's just growing. it will it will be seen as a completely different problem. I.e., video games are being designed to create addicts, which is a tangential problem. If you're, have the active personality, I don't wish that upon anybody. Um, Laura K. Dale, for example, has spoken about this. Jim certainly has talked about this. Some people talk about it, and also having created that effect in children. I mean, that's important, but I consider that to be part of a much larger problem. But if that becomes the genie in the bottle, right? Then it's like, oh, people who don't know about video games, don't know about the intricacies of microtransactions and how they affect the games and the experience and all that, will simply jump to the conclusion of video games are addictive. And we had this before. We had a sort of moral panic about, cases in Korea and in China, people playing World of Warcraft and stuff like that. It came and went very quickly. But if you add the word gambling to it, boom, there it is. The magic formula.
It's not too dissimilar to whenever there's a major, unfortunately, like a mass shooting, and then they find out that the suspect had just happened to play video games at some point in their life. They're like, you see, he played video games. They played violent video games. This wouldn't have happened if he played video games somehow.
Mm-hmm. Even if they're playing like hockey and they were just some fighting.
Oh no, he played Final Fantasy 1 when he was like 10.
Yeah, and I don't think EA cares about that, but they care about regulation. Regulation is a thing, right? And there's certain markets like the European Union, like Australia, where you have people who are very quick to go to bat to that. It's like, oh, we need a scapegoat. Video games, gambling, messing with children. Let's do this. And you're like, okay, and it's again a minefield of the video game industry's own creation, right? And my hope is that the collateral damage, if it does happen, it's not too great. But I think if that happens, if it really continues on and becomes an election year, at least locally, I don't think it's gonna be nationally, but something like locally, like local politicians, Hawaii or in California or in some other states, basically states we have a big entertainment industries and closer to technology and all that. If they get started doing that, I don't know, the secretary. The Attorney General of New York starts investigating stuff like that. It's not going to be something that is going to, be an election year event in the sense of like, 2020 is going to be decided who is going to be tougher in video game gambling. But it's going to be an issue, right?
Yeah.
Because also gambling, online gambling, is illegal. It's illegal in the United States. You can't, many of these companies are stationed outside the United States because they cannot operate from the United States. It's illegal to do online video game gambling. Of course, just like with video games, one of the reasons why that was made illegal was because casino owners didn't want the competition, right?
Yeah.
Because it's much easier.
The comfort of your own home.
Yeah, you sit there, you go online, you spend all the money. You don't have to go to the buffet at the Sands or something. Just do that. So yeah, this is complex in a way that is completely unnecessary to be so complex. It's a mess that's completely unnecessary. It's like, why? Well, we know why.
Lobbyists.
Money. Lobbyists. Money. And if you forgot the answer to that question, money.
So I think now is just the time to kind of sit back and watch the boat sink, I guess, slowly, or I don't know, see whether it'll stay afloat.
I think it will. I think it will.
Honestly, it's more like seeing how long the boat will stay afloat.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is that it's going to be more like Speed 2. The boat is going to crash on the quay, right? The boat is not going to sink, but it's going to crash ever so slowly into the quay, right? And it's going to get wrecked rather than sunk. right? I mean, even when I've been doing research on the crash of 1983, the North American crash of 1983, and the thing about it is that we're still talking about video games in 2017. So while it was a significant event, it didn't kill the video game industry. What it did do is force significant changes in some areas, right? And I think what's going to happen here is, in my prediction, I'm repeating this prediction. 2017, I made this prediction more than once on this program. What you're going to have is probably a couple of big publishers dash themselves in the rocks. I talk about Activision and EA, whatever. That's going to happen, but the entire industry is not going to collapse. The bubble is going to burst. Some companies are going to get rocked, and some of them are going to fall down. And I think what people who are going to come ahead are going to be some honest indies, and well, more honest indies, I suppose. It's just if you're testing on a gradient, of course.
Yeah.
And the double A industry,
Hmm.
right? People that, and ironically, are doing games the old-fashioned way. But I think we talked about this before. The problem with the double A industry is that the pressure from all sides is very great, so it's very difficult. It's a you're in the middle of the sandwich, right?
Yeah.
The temptation to make a very short, cheap, crowdfunded game that you can put out and hopefully you can get your money back is there. And if you do make a game that is pretty cool, then you have the sharks in the water, which are the AAA publishers who want to swallow you up.
Yeah. That's why I predict we'll never see anything from a Toby Fox creator of Undertale. Not that I wouldn't want to see it. I don't think he could ever top Undertale, and two, he would be swallowed up all probably slowly by big publishers company. Not that I don't think he would allow himself, but like
There's also very interesting. We talked about the Switch. I always say that, by the way, chat, because I tend to confuse it with Twitch for some reason. I don't know why. One's an online service, and another one is a game console, which I want to buy, but they're known here. They weren't here even before the goddamn storm. I'll probably have to order it from Amazon if I can get it in time. But now it has become the house of the indies, right?
oh yeah.
It's ironic, and the thing, it's also, it's a combination of things. Like, you have a new resurgent Nintendo machine, and many of these games evoke the era of the NES and the Super NES. And I think eventually, I don't know, going to the 3D era of Nintendo 64, they're like, it's more expensive and kind of ugly. I don't think people want to do that unless they want to do a horror game or something like that.
You would have to find a way to make it look ugly in a good way, essentially.
I think people will probably want to skip that and go right to the 2000s, like for the Xbox and PS2. That's more tolerable, right? If they're gonna go retro that way, and even then, I mean, I'm still have nightmares about GTA's San Andreas flipper hands. Dear God, literally, they were just a triangle with lines written on them. It's like, here's a thumb, here's a finger, and we're gonna move them like this, and you're like, God damn, stop that. So hopefully that's not gonna happen. But I think more like gameplay style, right? That if people do retro from early 2000s or the 90s, it's gonna be more about gameplay than look, right? But the look and the feel of these games fits very well with the Switch, which, let's be honest, Nintendo has been surviving on nostalgia since nostalgia was a thing for Nintendo products, which usually was when the Super Nintendo came around. It's like Super Mario Brothers, Mario games, and Legend of Zelda games, and all these things. And so, if you make something like Stardew Valley, it kind of looks like an NES game to me. Well, I mean, it kind of
an NES game crossed with a Harvest Moon.
Mm-hmm. That looks like right up their alley, and also because other markets are getting flooded, like Steam. It's like, let's be honest, flooded with crap. It's much easier for them, right?
Yeah, I would say Sony was actually pretty good at one point, but it might be It might be kind of dropping down a few notches because of they're kind of starting to let a few crappy games kind of come onto the PlayStation Network.
Well, I think that that's another problem that all these services have, and it's happened to Apple Store and happened to the Google, is that if you have too much control, right, nothing gets in, or very few things get in. If you open the floodgates, then everything goes in, smells and all, right, stench and all, and that's what happened to Steam. It's what happened with the Apple App Store. Right at the beginning, they were very like, no, we only leave the best, whatever. But then they opened the floodgates, and I think Nintendo, and we're talking about another aspect of Nintendo tying it to the crash in 1983 and the resurgence of consoles in the United States. One of the very smart things that Nintendo did was that they put the Nintendo seal of approval in their games. It didn't mean that the games were actually good. It meant that it wouldn't have certain kind of content, specifically sexuality and nudity and object sex, and that they would work. Because I think people tend to forget, at least where I come from, the Atari 2600 had a reputation for destroying televisions.
Whoa.
Yeah, and what happened? It didn't blow up or anything. What would happen, of course, is that there's a combination of things. First of all, it's like when you play with Atari 2600, you just, kids would just keep playing for hours on end, right? Well, many of these games, we're talking about 2K, 4K, 6K of memory, kilobytes here. The foreground would move, but the background would not. And you're talking about all CRTs here, right?
Yeah.
So you had parents who say, okay, the kid's going to be playing on that games machine over there. We're going to buy them a cheap, color TV or black and white TV. So already buying something that was pretty cheap, with $80, $90, $100, $200, something like that, in US, in $80, $70s, $80s. And on top of that, if they played hours and hours and end with the background fixed elements, they would burn the screen. And the screen would overheat, and then eventually the thing would break down, right? And mostly what happened was you get constant scrolling. One problem was it just gets because the television was trying to refresh, right, past the burning effect, and it just couldn't. And the cartridges, of course, would get the lead would oxidize and a bunch of other problems, and so that's one of many things that people lost confidence with Atari and American consoles in general. We drop a couple of frames there. And when Nintendo came back and said, no, we are a quality Japanese company, a family friendly, we're the Disney of video games.
Yep.
And they have survived on that for a very long time, right? I mean, there have been some games that are less than family friendly on Nintendo platforms, but very few indeed, right? And I think indies can go that, and I think you're gonna see people from the double industry also saddle onto that. I think the Switch is gonna be sort of like you're gonna see a lot of companies put especially their backlog in them as a sort of how can I say this, as a sort of a reserve strategy, right?
Yeah, to kind of dip their toe in and see how well their products are received before they put something brand new.
Yeah, and also it's like, because, and this is something that I noticed, for example, there's been a lot of talk about the fact that the reality is that video games don't cost more to make, but the increases are coming from other places such as advertising. And basically the cost of making video games has stabilized. But what's happening is that the AAA game industry is making less and less games. That means, and not because it costs more, because they can get more out of each game, right? Microtransactions, DLC, all the stuff we talked about before. And what happens is, if you're making less and less games, that puts more and more pressure on each game to be successful, making each game riskier. Not so
Hmm.
much because how much money you're putting in to make them. It's just that you don't have a large pool of games to spread the risk around. Right? If these couple of games fail, then these other games could succeed. Right?
Yeah.
So you can have, it's like Hollywood, right? Hollywood makes studios make dozens, hundreds of movies a year. Most of them are small Oscar bait movies, or they finance movies in secondary markets like Britain, Australia, and Canada, and some other places. Those make, some of them make money, some of them don't, but they also have their staple of um, big blockbusters, right? So
Yep.
each complements each other, right? In the aggregate, all the smaller movies make just enough profit so they can making them, right, and be profitable, and the company has money in the bank, and that kind of cushions the blow if one of these big blockbuster movies fails. And at the same time, if you have a big blockbuster movie that succeeds, you can make not only more summer blockbusters, but also make a lot of more indie movies. So I
Yeah.
think the Switch might be that kind of thing. Like, well, we have all these titles, we can port them, right? But that's just doing that with Doom, with Skyrim, because Skyrim goes and everything, and it's making them money, right? It's not making them as much money when Skyrim came out, right? Or Doom came out for PC, but money is money, right? And if you see a couple of leaks in the boat, any patch will do. So we have been up to an hour now. So that's been mostly about microtransactions. Hopefully, next week someone else will do something incredibly stupid, and we were talking about that instead. Not beating on EA so much. This may be the year of beating up on EA, basically, going all the way back to Mass Effect Andromeda, of course. That whole
Uh,
horse of ours.
yeah. Let's see if they win. They win their third worst company company of the year award.
Uh, So for now, I'd like to thank Chapelmon for being with us. Chapelmon, can you tell us where we can find you on the interwebs?
You can find me you can find me on YouTube primarily under Chopamon. You can find me on Twitter under Chopamon_Aragon. And I'm usually just Chopamon in most other places.
And you can find me at Lessons Learned 1 here on Twitch and Lessons Learned on YouTube, where I'm working always on videos about all this nonsense because I'm a masochist and that's what I do. And of course, I also stream. I'm a streamer here on Twitch, not Switch, not yet. On hopefully on the regular, including a new program called Hacking the Fifth, which is about hacking the fifth edition of Dungeons and Dragons, adding rules and messing with them. That's Hacking on the Fifth in Twitch, expanding the fifth on YouTube because YouTube's algorithm doesn't like the word hack for some reason. They think maybe I'm going to be a axe murder or something. So I'd like to thank Guard Dog and all those people who are in the chat for being with us in this hour. And as always, if you like this or any video on my channel and on Chapelmon channel,